Hi, and welcome to our webinar on how is cloud computing supporting the legal tech revolution. My name's Rich Dibbins, the Integration Commercial Manager here at InfoTrack. Today, we're going to discuss how cloud-based technologies are supporting law firm growth, staying relevant and competitive. And finally, how law firms can become more innovative, self-sufficient, secure, and maintain data transparency, as well as understanding the whole conveyancing process electronically. We've split this webinar into 4 key topics: mobile working, cloud-to-cloud interoperability, security and data, and finally, scalability, innovation, and machine learning. There is an option for you to ask questions in our Q&A section, as well as at the end of the session. We have a great lineup of experts today. If I could ask all of you to introduce yourselves, let's start with yourself, Scott, then David, and then Sam.
Thanks, Richard. My name's Scott Bozinis. I'm CEO of InfoTrack. I joined the InfoTrack business some sort of 11 years ago and have spent the best 7 over here in the UK working to build some of the most modern legal technology here in the UK.
Nice one. Hello, everyone. My name is David Hepburn. I'm the Global President of Actionstep. We are a practice management platform from the cloud. We have about 3,000 law firm customers around the world, a lot in the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, of course. Very excited to be here with you and looking forward to talking.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me along today. Sam Miller, based in London, and I lead our partner management team here in the UK and I.
Excellent. Thank you, all of you. Okay, so let's kick things off with David around mobile working. David, we have heard how important it is to create an environment where everyone can work from home and be self-sufficient. How does this self-sufficiency help law firms?
You know, in the last year or so, we've all discovered that prolonged remote working has really exposed some of that human glue that we all have grown to love in our practices, but it's no longer that easy to actually go and talk to someone and even ask them for help or walk over to their desk. So, you know, before I dive in, you know, the technology you use can really define how well you and your practice function in this remote environment. And I suppose we're here today to talk a lot about cloud software, but that software really delivered through a browser like Google Chrome or to a mobile device, you know, makes a whole lot of accessibility easier than those old apps that might have been installed on your computer. And from a cloud-based practice management perspective, such as Actionstep, there are many others out there, but there are a number of factors that really enable that self-sufficiency. I mean, first up, you can access the matters or cases that you're working in from anywhere, from that browser with no VPN or using your mobile or tablet. You know, and you'll find also that cloud software, because it's new technology, is intuitive and easy to use. It's recent, and it'll enable you to figure out how to do things yourself. And I suppose one other key thing that we find with many of our customers is that they want to be able to configure their software and technology the way they want to work, how their particular area of speciality operates, or the tasks that make up their day. So having a very flexible platform that is orientated around data and workflow, and also where you might spend a lot of your time. We find many of our customers spend time in places like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Outlook. And you know, having technology, cloud-based technology, can sit alongside Office 365 or Microsoft 365 within the application, enabling you to do all those cool things that you do is really helpful. So there are so many benefits, I suppose, from new technology and cloud technology. And a lot of these benefits have manifested themselves for many of our customers in actually being able to take admin resources that used to do very menial and boring tasks in the practice and focusing them on a lot of higher value work that actually supports their practice more broadly, but also delivers that better client service.
Excellent. Thank you for that, David. Scott, how has cloud computing supported the adoption of a digital approach to conveyancing?
A good question, Rich. In many ways, I think it's given us flexibility. I think that's probably one incredible strength and speed of adoption. The move to digital, especially in the industry sort of we're in predominantly is legal, is nothing changes. And then when it changes very quickly. And I'm going to mention COVID because it was sort of, you can't get too far without not. But you know, what COVID did is change things quickly for us, and in our sector, you know, someone like the land registry coming along and allowing digital signatures on a document really opens up sort of more digitization of the legal process, and then we all have to move quickly. And what cloud computing does is often allow us to partner up with firms that are much bigger than ourselves. InfoTrack's not a small business, but when sat next to Amazon, we're very small. And cloud computing, Amazon is our cloud provider. What that does is it allows us to partner up with very large firms that at very low sort of costs, we can access really complicated and advanced technologies quickly. So when out of the blue, there's sort of a legislative change too early in the morning, what we can do is adapt quickly, and we've got a partner that's there ready to go. Cloud computing is often very much associated with SaaS and pay-as-you-go type services. So for low cost of entry for ourselves and low cost of entry for our clients, we can adopt these technologies and digitize very, very quickly. In our case, sometimes it's just simply access to large scale databasing, large scale storage through S3. It might be OCR and documents and working through the AI and the tech extract services that AWS has. So yeah, I think for us, the cloud sort of is the flexibility that allows us to go very big, very quickly. But even in the COVID times, allows you to reduce back down in size. So, you know, during the tougher months last year, we could shrink our costs right back down again and have that flexibility. So flexibility of size, flexibility of services. So yeah, you know, recently we added some SMS services onto our platform, and you know, the Amazon services have that there. And so I think, yeah, most of the cloud providers that we all work with are often bigger than ourselves, are there ready to go and just give us that flexibility of versus the old days, potentially having to have large investment costs, buying software, buying hardware, and have to set that up. You know, those days are gone with cloud computing. And so therefore, in a world that's changing faster than ever, with or without COVID, you know, that's really helped us a lot.
Thank you for that, Scott. I guess a lot of law firms have probably moved their technology timescale forward as a cause of, you know, dare we say, COVID again. Brilliant. Thank you for that, for both of you. Moving on to Sam and the digital life in the cloud, we talk about cloud-to-cloud interoperability. Sam, what are some of AWS's key security principles, innovations, investments that have enabled your partners like Actionstep and InfoTrack to thrive?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rich. And on Scott's point as well, you know, customers always want to move faster. And certainly, as you said, you know, the pandemic has given rise to a demand for more emerging technologies, particularly when we talk about customer experience. But even if I think about Amazon Web Services' first customer, Amazon Retail, you know, the core aim of that business was to delight customers by saving time and saving money while shopping. And smart automation and an ability to break down those silos and really leverage data through interoperability and cloud computing has allowed Amazon to deliver that customer experience that many of us are hopefully familiar with today. But of course, a few years on, technology partners like Actionstep and InfoTrack are moving quickly. They need to move quickly to deliver the value to their customers, which is absolutely happening. And you know, a few key principles as to why customers are adopting AWS rapidly. The first I would say is certainly agility. Customers want to spin up resources as they need them, deploying hundreds or even thousands of servers in minutes. That's one of the benefits of cloud. And it means that customers can develop really quickly and roll out application releases down from months to weeks to days, and really deliver that seamless customer experience. But it also means that you can experiment and deprovision resources without risk as well. You know, you don't have to spend upfront amounts of capital to build out infrastructure that may not have a use. And so the experimental is really important. The other obvious thing, particularly, you know, coming out of the pandemic, hopefully, you know, is cost saving. Customers really want to free up cost for innovation. And AWS allows customers to trade that capital expense, as I mentioned earlier, for a variable expense. So you only really pay for the IT as you use it. And of course, that variable expense is much lower than customers can normally achieve on by themselves because of AWS's economies of scale. And so as the offering continues to grow, AWS continues to return those cost savings to our customers. And actually, since AWS's inception in 2006, we've lowered prices 106 times to support that cause. The other important trend I'd mention as well is elasticity. Customers have in the past over-provisioned to make sure that they don't lose capacity or you don't experience any downtime. But now you can provision just in a utility model the amount of resources you need to manage in the peak. So where we're seeing scalable demand, depending on the workload you're using, it's really important that customers have that flexibility and on-demand experience. And the final thing I'd say is that cloud allows partners like Actionstep and InfoTrack to innovate much faster. I think Scott mentioned it. It's all about refocusing highly valuable IT resources on higher level tasks of innovative application development that's going to differentiate the organization rather than that undifferentiated heavy lifting of managed infrastructure and data centers.
Excellent, thank you, Sam. Scott, following on from what Sam talked about, elements of scale and also, CX, customer usability, how do you think cloud computing has supported the adoption of digital approach to conveyancing for law firms?
I think what's probably interesting for us is we've seen our clients are traditionally the law firms, obviously, and their clients are the consumers often buying or selling a property. And what we've seen is this come closer together. There used to be a gap potentially between a legal technology provider to a law firm and their clients. The nature of COVID, not being able to physically see people, we need to use technology to bring that all together. And cloud computing solves this really well because obviously the cloud is a neutral space. So as as consumers need more digital services, the cloud-based providers are able to help law firms more with their consumers, not just themselves, if you like. So onboarding technologies, digital signing, things like that has really is been supported by cloud computing. That to those firms that aren't using cloud computing, that maybe have on-prem, that's just a lot trickier to get going, is to bring together sort of the whole ecosystem of the law firm under sort of one umbrella. So yeah, I think that's been an incredible benefit to us and those firms that are in the cloud to have that flexibility. And the missing piece there is the security as well. When you're trying to bring together multiple parties under the one roof, security can be a real challenge, and really AWS provides that for us, that again on-prem really struggles with. So yeah, that's really been an advantage, I think, bringing the whole ecosystem together.
Excellent. And David, anything to add around that aspect?
Yeah, I was just listening to Sam there, thinking about elasticity and scalability. One of our conveyancing customers in Australia about 3 years ago was probably subscribing maybe 20 to 30 users to Actionstep on the basis, and today they're 220 subscribers 3 years later, and they've grown and kind of almost taken over the conveyancing space in Australia with a very, very low price, one price, fixed price kind of conveyancing model, which has really disrupted the market. But that scalability that they've gone through, and that's just the same Actionstep instance for them. We've obviously scaled behind the scenes with AWS to deliver that customers' services. Is a great example of how a dynamic firm can grow really rapidly and not have a technology hamstring to prevent it from growing. But I suppose in other respects, to echo some of Scott's points there, that cloud-to-cloud integration is really important. We've seen organizations use bots to gather, capture data from new clients as they join their website, and then based on that information, route that client to the right lawyer or the right team within the practice management system, creating a matter there and then. We've seen other organizations use cloud-based caller recognition technology that integrates with our platform, Actionstep, that captures time that a lawyer may spend on a phone, and then actually transfers that time straight into a bill. Again, very powerful technology, and obviously hoovering up some of those hours that many lawyers struggle to capture in those sorts of circumstances. And then finally, a really big one, I touched on this a little earlier, is the way that Microsoft now builds its suite around Microsoft 365 and all that cloud capability allows us as a cloud-based provider to really integrate very tightly with that. So, for example, in the real estate of Outlook, you have all of the key features around tracking documents, creating tasks, tracking time, all within your Outlook instance, so that actually you don't need to leave Outlook to do many of the kind of practice management type tasks that you need to each day. So that has cloud-to-cloud type interoperability has really created a really rich environment for our customers to benefit from all that latest tech.
Excellent. Thank you for that, David. Following on with that, and a couple of areas you mentioned was data and security. Sam, this is always a hot topic when it comes to cloud. How does AWS approach such a sensitive and obvious subject?
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. So, whilst doing all those great things that Richard just described, David just described, it's so important that customers, legal firms, technology partners can focus on that application level to really deliver the value. And for AWS, security is absolutely our top priority. And we're actually build out core infrastructure to satisfy the needs of military and large global banks and highly sensitive and regulated organizations. And of course, the benefit of that centralized design, hardware and software design, is that all AWS customers benefit from that rigor. And of course, AWS's scale, again, means that we can invest significantly more in security policing and countermeasures than almost any large organization could, and customers benefit from that as well. But the tooling is really important too. So on top of all of that, there are methodologies that we encourage our customers to look at. This is well-architected frameworks, methodologies for best practice architecture deployment. So, has different pillars, and security is certainly one of those, but a whole range of services and functionality based around security. In fact, up to 230 security and compliance and governance services, along with hundreds of AWS security partners that are listed on our AWS marketplace for customers to use as well. And of course, AWS has to meet the requirements for internationally recognized certification and accreditations, and so customers can benefit from that as well.
Thank you for that, Sam. I guess adding into all of that, there was the element of speed. I mean, like you said, Amazon has all these clients, all those security elements within there. So speed, David, you touched on with lawyers and spending hours around with data. How does providing access to useful and timely data help law firms drive better business decisions?
It's so important. That single source of truth within a practice is a really big deal, because we find many of our customers now have so many touch points within the practice with a client, might be the paralegal or the administrative team to the lawyer, and everyone needs access to that same data. So that's really key to start. And as Sam said, data security, access rights, and particularly so many of the regulatory and audit requirements that law firms have, are all critical. So having that data well organized and as that single source of truth is really key. And I suppose from a practice visibility perspective, why would you buy a practice management system? Well, obviously, to manage your matters and run your business, but most importantly is the reporting and data aspect of the practice management system, being able to understand the health of your firm and where your matters are at, or where clients are at in their journey as they interact with you. So getting that data and turning it into insights, is really, really important. And that can then drive, action. It might help you understand where your revenue is coming from, or where your profit's coming from in respect to your firm, which practice areas, really achieving and which aren't, which people and teams, are doing more and billing more. How efficiently are you moving clients through your processes? If you, and many organizations don't have processes indoctrinated or even developed into their practice management systems, which again can be very powerful for repeatability and client predictability. And then I suppose, logging calls, communicating, updating files, how your clients interact with you, whether it's through a portal or whether you're emailing them all the things that they get, or SMS messaging them, those are all aspects of data and interaction that are really so important. So, all of those pieces kind of come together really and actually we found, and just to echo some of Sam's comment, you know, the way that we've architected our platform with point-to-point encryption and leveraging so many of those AWS services around security, you know, has really allowed us to provide, you know, our many thousands of law firm customers that peace of mind that their data is highly secure within Actionstep and obviously Amazon Web Services facilities around the world.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, David. Scott, you kind of touched on different firms. You know, there was a big split between the big firms with their technology and the smaller firms. At InfoTrack, how have we basically managed to support the electronic conveyancing process now within this?
Yeah, I think it's a good point on that. You know, there is often an advantage larger firms have with, you know, access to resources, but I think a healthy legal market needs all size firms active. We need high street firms and we need very large firms. And again, back to the scale, you know, economies of scale of Amazon provide sort of a unit cost price that then allows to filter on. So it doesn't matter if you're a very large firm or a very small firm. Once you use a cloud provider like Amazon and then InfoTrack becomes a cloud provider to you, that everyone gets a really healthy cost point. And I think that's an important point you touch on when you distinguish between large and small firms. How has that then allowed us to digitize? Well, obviously we can then build the technology that allows a small firm to stand as tall as a large firm. And again, that's just healthy for the economy. And I think that's what we saw when the web first came out, that a business can be very, very large or very, very small, but behind a website, it kind of looks the same. It doesn't need that big shop frontage. And so as legal services are digitized, and people expect more digital interaction with a law firm, those law firms can be positioned anywhere in the country. They can be very large firms, very small firms. They can run out of a kitchen table still. But using, I guess, large providers that allow you to walk a lot taller than potentially you are, especially if you're in the startup phase of a business, you're really taking the true benefit of the cloud and the internet to some extent there.
You kind of touched on the elements of scale there as well. You know, the kitchen unit of doing conveyancing on there, that's now not an uncommon Zoom scene that we would say. Not to mention the important aspect of machine learning as well. So, Scott, how does cloud technology enable, you know, law firms to move away from this paper-based process? And how does that complement your integration with partners such as Actionstep?
Yeah, look, machine learning is an interesting one. Make no mistake. AI and machine learning is rocket science. It's rocket science to us all. But again, you know, Amazon gives us technologies that are bite-sized, that are small, that are easy to take on, that are cost-effective, that in truth, if we had to develop them in-house or a law firm had to develop them in-house, they'd be well out of our reach. You know, these are complex technologies. And why are they important to legal? Because legal has large amounts of information, has information that's not always digitized to start with, is paper-based technology. And, you know, we lean on machine learning to, first of all, convert paper-based technologies to digital. And then we lean on machine learning to take large amounts of digital data to give us, you know, best answers and best responses. You know, this just wouldn't be possible if we were left to do it sort of in-house like we did in the old days. So I think, you know, we have to understand that, again, I say this, these cloud providers allow us all to walk a lot taller. We wouldn't have access to a lot of this information. And of course, as David touched on, single source of truth, or all of your data in the one spot. If you haven't got all of your data in the one spot or all of your systems together, it's really hard to get that overall view or that overall understanding of your business. So by sort of using cloud providers, you get your data in the one spot, you pair up to technologies that are probably putting a man on the moon, but in truth, you just need them to read a legal document and give you some sort of information quickly. And I think, you know, it really does work. It really is there. And, you know, maybe to some people out there that are listening in, this is not, you know, some of these are not bleeding edge technologies, but it's just a reminder that it's time to move to that cloud and get the benefits. And, you know, one thing I'll reiterate is that cloud to cloud technology is everything. You know, when someone comes along to InfoTrack and wants to integrate, if they're in the cloud, it's really straightforward. Let's get going. And if they're not in the cloud, it's really hard work to try to integrate through firewalls and through local systems to sort of get to on-prem technology. You know, during the pandemic, we had to send all of our staff home, and our voice system was in the cloud. It just wasn't a big deal, and integrating that into our core systems wasn't a big deal. But for, so for no other reason to move your systems into the cloud is that when the next big thing comes along, you can plug it straight in. But if you're still running your own proprietary systems or proprietary technologies, you're going to find it just harder and harder to integrate your systems.
Thank you for that, Scott. We've touched on a lot with the law firms. They're incredibly competitive with each other. And Scott, when you mentioned about, being more remote, like the InfoTrack team, I've known of law firms to simply close their offices and put everybody remote. It saves on overhead and they do work more efficiently. David, staying ahead of market developments with technology, that won't go out of date to import, basically that's important for today's law firms. Why is it important to stay ahead of market developments?
Some of these are just really basic. I mean, again, ease of access is number one, across all the different devices that you want to interact with as a lawyer, whether you're maybe not so much today at a court or at home or out on a client site or in your car or wherever you are, just being able to access the system simple if you're accessing a cloud platform. The second piece is regulatory requirements and compliance. Again, as Sam said, it's so, we don't have a business if we can't remain, up-to-date regulatory and compliant. And what Amazon does in all the geos that we operate in is ensure that we're staying, really up-to-date from a security perspective. And obviously they help us, address any of those kind of key compliance requirements or changing compliance requirements, whether it's Brexit related or EU operations or doing the transaction in a different geo. All of that stuff, comes along with cloud tech. Next up for me is just future-proofing your firm. Getting stuck on-prem systems and applications that are tied to servers in your offices leaves you left behind, quite frankly, whether it's from a security perspective and access to your data, or whether, as we've been talking about, some of that interoperability with other systems is just key. And then again, another thing we update our software, twice a week, most weeks, with new features, updates, and all the rest of it. And again, that just means that happens behind the scenes. You don't even know it's happening because we don't have to deploy anything locally to you. We do it all in our servers and Amazon Web Services. So, really key for you there. And then I suppose my final point really is that, as things change and the world continues to find many new equilibriums, it's just so important that your technology is an enabler, not a sort of a noose around your neck and preventing you from innovating and doing the types of business models that you really want to achieve. So again, huge hard sell for you guys on getting to the latest technology, but I think it's going to pay huge dividends for your firms. Definitely.
Sam, David touched on innovation there, kind of leads me on to my question for you. What can we expect from AWS? Are there any advantages of moving to the cloud we haven't mentioned?
Yeah, just touching on David's point there around security, it's so important, to think about how to remain compliant and secure in the future, trying to patch and update the monolith from an application perspective in the old days, or trying to, make sure that rogue server under the desk somewhere is, operating as should be, it just isn't secure enough in today's environment. So centralizing that management, baking DevSecOps, as we call it, security into the development cycle is really important. I just wanted to emphasize that, and that's part of the benefit that cloud development and deployment and the speed of cloud can certainly help with. But yeah, looking into the future, it's hard to predict the future and where things are going. But I would certainly expect AWS to focus on the constant. So as Scott was saying, reducing cost will remain important, increasing functionality so customers can do more things with the platform. That David and Goliath type approach that Scott referred to will remain extremely important. But I'd also emphasize that partners are really important as well. AWS obviously have a large community of partners working around our customers. Just as in the retail platform where you have these sort of third-party vendors which offer customers much more choice. And so with AWS, we have consulting and technology partners that help customers innovate and ease operations and the adoption of some of these emergent technologies that we're talking about. So changing the way that you consume IT can be daunting, but getting the support of an accredited AWS partner like ActionStep or InfoTrack can certainly significantly increase the speed of adoption and certainly lower the risk as well. Touching on one of the points actually Dave mentioned there as well, a big trend that we're going to continuously see is digitalization and the ability to really leverage data. And it's amazing how much analytics are being done in the cloud today. It's never been easier to collect, store, analyze, and share data as it is in the cloud. And that's partly because it's more cost effective to do it in the cloud, but it's also, there's a lot more analytics services available. As Scott was saying, a touch of the buttons. I completely agree with that. And that's allowing customers through open APIs to connect suppliers and data and provide a better experience for customers as well. And of course, bringing that data together, we talk about the use of data lakes, and storage is the foundation to that. We have a service called S3. And back on the point around security, AWS will continue to invest and innovate around security. And now AWS is one of the only providers that can actually put provisioning control and access control at the bucket level of storage, and all kinds of access permission tools that I sort of mentioned earlier, allowing customers to share data and use data to evolve and develop their business, but in a secure manner. So you'll continue to see lots of investment around that area as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Sam. We've had a few questions come in. Just to remind you, there is a Q&A section. You just pop your questions in there if you do want to ask any of our experts around the aspects of cloud security or AWS. Scott, we had a question for yourself. As a law firm, we're becoming increasingly aware that technology can save us time and money, but we don't currently have a CMS. How long approximately would it take to get set up and to start taking advantage of the integrations in technology you've discussed?
Apologies, I went on mute because there's some crows outside making a racket. If you don't have a CMS, definitely you've got David on the call here from ActionStep, so that'll be my take there. But yeah, I mean, cloud to cloud, it doesn't take anything, because if we've done the integration once between InfoTrack and ActionStep, then it's done. So as soon as you sort of on board with us, you're ready to go, which is obviously very different to if it wasn't cloud to cloud. The other thing we didn't even touch on is speed. All of my servers sit with AWS, and so does David. So therefore, the two systems talk really quickly together because they're probably physically not that far apart.
Actually,
yeah.
I was going to say, Scott, and like the time frames to spin up, a new platform with a customer and integrated to InfoTrack immediately, on spinning it up by selecting that menu item, is a matter of minutes. And then in terms of implementation, will depend a little bit on how much data you want to migrate into the new system, but it could be anything from a few days to a month of implementation. Obviously, there's some training and change management you might want to consider, as well as setting up a platform to manage the way you want to work and to operate the way you want to work. So not that big a deal, and a process that we ourselves, InfoTrack and ActionStep, do very often with many customers.
Definitely.
David, kind of following on from the question with Scott there, what three things should a law firm consider when selecting a new practice management system?
And well, we've touched on a few of them today already, but I think the first one for me is really trying to figure out how to change your technology model and benefit from the cloud. And if it's an on-premise system, I would really encourage you to think very hard about that. Other aspects of SaaS or cloud-based technologies are subscription fees. I mean, we bill on a month-to-month basis, depending on how many users you have. We allow our customers to dial users up and down. So in COVID times, if there were some furloughed members of the team, our customers, we have a number of big firms in London, who dialed 10 or 15 lawyers out of their subscription, month to month, and then for 3 or 4 months, and then spun them back up again. That's the sort of flexibility of cloud software. I mean, the next thing I think I would ask is really, can the system be configured around how you want to work? That's a really big deal, because that's how you actually deliver your value to your customers. And being forced to do something some particular way in a case management or practice management system is very frustrating, particularly for members of your law firm. And then finally, I'd encourage you, and this maybe links to the first question there, to do the best implementation you can. We have a partner network that we use to implement our system, who know and understand, firms like conveyancers and how best to operate. Try and do a really nice install that gets you very close to the perfect way that you want to work. And that will give you some major downstream benefits in the future. Doing a half-assed, low-cost, cheap one usually results in varieties of frustrations and a second go-around of trying to improve it. So I'd encourage you to get out the traps well.
I think my mum would always say, buy cheap, pay twice, or something. I think that's the saying.
That's right. Totally.
We've had another question, and this one's around security. It feels like we have access to a lot of client data just using a few passwords from home. Is there a lot of security built into the software to prevent, for example, identity theft of our clients? Who would like to answer that security one?
I can try from my perspective. I mean, essentially in Actionstep, we have basically two layers of security that allow a lawyer or a paralegal or a practice manager to access. So first up is obviously password, and we allow organizations to set password policies, very complex password policies, if that's what they'd like to do. And on the back end of that, we have something called multi-factor authentication. So you may have come across that on various websites or services that you provide. That basically authenticates you as often as you would like. So if you'd like to do that once every 24 hours, that requires every user of our platform to receive a text or use an authenticator application to enter a 6-digit number that proves that they're who they are as they're logging into the system. And then behind the scenes, and Sam can maybe talk about this, we have encryption between your web browser and the Actionstep servers in Amazon Web Services, which means that everything that leaves your screen is basically encrypted to a very, very high degree between it and the endpoint in Amazon. And then Amazon provides us with a whole raft of amazing, totally up-to-date, we just deploy them when they become available, security services within its data centers and facilities around the world. And we obviously back up everything and mirror everything that we have in our facility. So if something goes wrong somewhere or there's a connectivity issue, then we fail over to another Amazon instance elsewhere in your geo, if that's possible. So there's a whole range of kind of security layers that I think should give you a huge amount of confidence that the data you're interacting with, say, on our pollution, is much safer than that's sitting under a desk in your office, say, on a server.
Thank you for that, David. Scott, would you like to just touch on some of the InfoTrack security elements?
I just echo David's multi-factor authentication. I think that's absolutely critical. I think there is certain aspects of the InfoTrack system that hold particularly sensitive personal data, and to access that is by both password and SMS authentication. So anyone would need both access to your mobile phone and know your password as well. And I think that's absolutely critical. That as we work from home, you need those two steps to access the data, and that's what gives you that security.
Thank you. And Sam, I guess from an AWS perspective?
Absolutely. So I think, as I said earlier, a huge amount of services investment going into the security is job zero for AWS and all of our partners. And there's a number of services, I suppose, just to bring it to life a little bit. Some of those key services, AWS config as an example, constantly scanning for security threats in the configurations. When partners are developing or customers are developing code, tools like Cloud Guru to check for code development best practice and where there may be some vulnerabilities. AWS Guard Duty, a newly released service that uses machine learning technology to actively take data out of services like config and then make active recommendations. And then the AWS Security Hub as a proliferation of all services and recommendations, leveraging the most current information. If you imagine, we have global teams constantly scanning and updating for threats, leveraging information from that security hub to then feed back into customers' services to make those proactive recommendations. So, and of course, on top of all of that, a range of either partners, security competency partners that can advise on security best practice in the cloud, but also, as I mentioned earlier, our cloud well-architected framework, which gives the best practice of development for a number of key pillars, but one of those being security as well.
Brilliant. Thank you all three of you for answering that question. That's a huge aspect with the cloud is security, especially with law firms and the amount of data they do control. Sam, just following on, we've got another one for you. If I were interested in adopting cloud technology for my firm, what would be the first steps I should take for adoption? And is there an opportunity to trial any software for free before making a commitment?
Yeah, sure. So, the first thing I would say, you need people in your organization like David and Scott that we've got on the call today. The decision to operate and utilize cloud has to come from the top down in the organization. This is often technology is the easier element here. It's the people and the process and the commitment and making sure that the objectives of the business are tied to the technology, because technology, as we've discussed on this call today, can be truly transformational, but you've got to have a top-down agenda. And the other thing I would say is what we find with customers, sometimes the whole moving to cloud can feel complicated, and you sort of get this feeling of paralysis where it's like, well, let's just not do anything. As David said earlier, that stagnation of technology can really leave you behind. And so it's important to engage with a partner to understand what could that journey be. Could we break down our key workloads into chunks, into bite-sized approaches? And Actionstep and InfoTrack are great examples of partners that you can start to understand, what are the key workloads? How can we start to adopt cloud without sort of experiencing any disruption? In terms of free trials, a lot of our technology partners offer those, and we have funding available to support customers with proof of concept for our partner network and all those great things. AWS also has a free tier where you can create an AWS account and you can access all of the core services without any cost to a certain level, so you can start to experiment and get a feel for how the platform works and looks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Sam. So if we're going to finally wrap it up, if you, all three of you, could offer some pearls of wisdom to our audience, what one piece of advice would you give? Let's start with David, and then Sam, and then finally yourself, Scott.
One pearl of advice. I think, just to kind of echo what Sam said there. From our perspective, I'd try before you buy. I'd let you go out, and if you register some interest with Actionstep, you will be connected with a member of our team who can spin you up a system, and you can have a play and see if you like it and get a feel for it. That's really the power of the cloud. Amazon will spin up the system for us, and you can use it, and if you decide not to progress, it'll disappear again. So that pearl of wisdom is give it a try, explore it, because I think you'll find you're missing out and could get left behind technologically if you don't make that adjustment.
Thank you, David. Sam?
Yeah, on a similar theme, actually, I was thinking the same as David, but I'll put it slightly differently, and that's to experiment and not to be afraid of failure. Amazon as an organization, we pride ourselves on some of our biggest failures. You just hope that, the successes outweigh the cost of the failures, but you have to invest in the failure to innovate and differentiate in the market. But the great thing about the cloud is, as David was saying, you can experiment, and if it goes wrong, you can provision that resource, and it doesn't really matter. But also, Scott was saying, there's a huge amount of extensibility within AWS now, over 200 core services, from anything from DevOps services to security services to migration services to workplace services to contact center services. I could go on, but you can adopt those. The heavy lifting has been done, and so it should be easier for you to consume and experiment with that platform as well. So yeah, my sort of pearl of wisdom would be, don't be afraid of failure, you know, partner to de-risk the model, and use the cloud to experiment.
Thank you for that, Sam. Yeah, the support is out there. It's just taking that first step, that first leap. And finally, yourself, Scott.
Try InfoTrack's report on title. It is our newest product. It's an example of the cloud working well. You won't have to install any software. You'll get the benefit of the product pulling data from the land registry, from Actionstep, from results. It's the perfect example we have today. It's only a month old, and it's a perfect example of cloud-based technology that's ready to go. Try it for free, and you know, see what modern cloud computing looks like, and that's just the perfect example.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Scott. Lastly, I would just like to thank our panel today. So Sam Miller, Head of UK and Ireland Partner Management at Amazon Web Services, David Hepburn, Global President of Actionstep, and finally, Scott Bozinis, CEO of InfoTrack. This webinar will be available to view and download from our YouTube channel as soon as possible. I just want to wish everybody thank you for all your questions. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.